Thank you. Thank you, Professor Biswajit, and good morning to everybody, fellow panelists. Already a lot of grounds have been covered by both Professor Biswajit and Nityananda. And I'll be limited to only two types of issues. One, the thrust of this budget, broad thrust of the budget. And second is that how the trust or budget proposals address the issues at hand. I would confine myself only to these aspects. But before I begin, I wanted to share with you that I was always reminded when I was listening to the budget, I was remembering very repeatedly what that Biswajit has referred to. Keynes' famous saying. Let me quote what he said. That in the long run, we are all dead. Economists set themselves too easy. If in tempestuous seasons, they can only tell that when the storm is long past, the ocean is flat, unquote. So this was a reminder because the thrust of the budget was on the long term. Actually, it's based on 4 pillars for the Amrut Kal of 25 years. It is interesting, in the bad old days of planning, when plan was made, there was a perspective plan. But perspective plan basically try to coordinate the thinking of the experts, policymakers, and all to coordinate on the issues of goal, strategies, and policy options. But when the Amrut Kal for 25 years was talked about, I don't find that is any document backs it. Actually, this seems to be practice when the government was saying that by 2025, Indian economy will achieve the growth of, will reach $5 trillion. But it is not documented, it is not based on any kind of thinking, organized or coordinated thinking. As Nitya, I hope, I don't see any paper which backs the Amrut Kal and all the 4 pillars of the foundation. 4 pillars is investment, basically, infrastructure, and then inclusive development. And one more is the 4 I's, basically, and infrastructure. These are the 4 pillars. These are 4 pillars of the new India. But actually, it looks to me there's a deficit. There will be a dichotomy between the new economy and the traditional, a tiny new economy and a large traditional economy, which will substitute perhaps Bharat and India. It will be something like a different meaning of Bharat and India. The new India and the traditional India. But having said that, I would like to compliment the finance minister on one account, maybe 2. That is, for the last 2 years, she has presented the budget in a very transparent manner, avoiding any kind of creative accounting. For that, I think she deserves compliment. Second thing, I don't know whether it is a compliment or not, but she has attempted to contain the fiscal deficit, more importantly, revenue deficit, prudent fiscal management requires to contain revenue management because revenue expenditure has a bad name. So it is a prudent fiscal management means you have to contain the revenue expenditure. So in that sense, I'm not so it is whether that's good or bad, but in that sense, revenue expenditure is really contained. It is attempted to brought down from 4.9% earlier, I think, to 3.8%. And fiscal deficit is also has increased a little, but not much, given all the problems. But then, of the fiscal deficit, 70% of them will be financed through market borrowing, basically treasury bills and government securities. This is like the idea is to induce government expenditure is intended to induce private expenditure. But in that process, what is likely to happen when the 70% will be based on market borrowing, it is likely to crowd out the private investment, private borrowing. There's a risk in that. Now I come to the growth recovery. Professor Biswajit and Professor Nitya have already talked about it. I want to talk about a little detail. The one of the major issue at hand is to revive the economy. But revival means that we have to, we have to really go faster. Professor Biswajit has talked about that even in 2019-20, the growth has come down to 3.7%. More importantly, when you go into details, that capital formation, fixed capital formation, gross fixed capital formation came down from 34.3% in 2011-12 to 28.9%. Investment came down from 39% to 32%, 32.2%. And gross saving, which came down from 35 to 30% in 2019-20. And household saving has come down from 23.6% to 17.2%. So this is because one of the four drivers of the India economy: government consumption, export, investment, and private consumption. It is all well known that private consumption is the driver of the Indian economy. And when the private consumption is declined, private consumption is declined from 60%, 60.5% in 2019-20 to 57.5%. So this problem is not just COVID, it is the before COVID. With the 2019 itself is 1920, there's a serious structural problem. So the revival of growth has to be addressed, keeping in view all these structural, all these problems. But thrust of the budget is on capital expenditure. I think capital expenditure, there is no quarrel about capital expenditure. It has gone up really substantially to 7 lakh crore from 66 lakh crore, which is a substantial jump. The two things we know, one thing we know that infrastructure, Indian producers find it difficult to compete globally. One of the constraints is infrastructure cost is high. The second is that the logistic cost is high. It is 13 to 14% in India, as against about 8 to 9% in most developed countries. It's a very high. That's why producers find it very difficult to compete globally. So this is understandable and this is desirable to focus on infrastructure, logistic expenditure. In that sense, the focus is very clear and good. But difficulty is that out of this 7 lakh crore, more than 3 lakh crore will be transferred to the states for creating assets. This is all good, but devil lies in implementation. Implementation it involves time, but it is a notoriously sluggish implementation. As a result, with this capital expenditure would be able to address the issues that are at hand. I will be addressing only 2-3 issues. And in the context, as you all know, that COVID-19 has impacted not only economy but also society in a big way. And one aspect is already, it was mentioned, is the unemployment. The estimate is that about 2.3 million people, 2.3 crore people have become, 23 million people have been unemployed. It's a CMI figure. Has lost jobs during the COVID period. Actually, it began with a demonetization and it worsened the lockdown to contain COVID-19, worsened the situation. So this, where the budget, through the capital expenditure, where the budget projects is a 60 lakh crore, 60 crore. Yes, 60 lakh, 60 lakh job creation, which means 12 lakh per annum, 60 lakh in 5 years. Against the requirement against the 2.3 crore unemployment. In addition, there is an addition to the labor force every year to the tune of 11 million. 1.1. Unemployment is a very serious issue. But this is the private expenditure, the capital expenditure will not be able to address the employment generation. It is the government of India budget also does not recognize that it will be able to address will be able to generate only 60 lakh jobs. So it falls terribly short of the requirement. And coming to on the top of this is the inflation, which was also mentioned earlier, that according to RBI figure, it is already 5.7%. And when we did study earlier that whenever inflation rises, it is the poor which is affected most. Already they have lost jobs, they have lost income. On the top of it, the price is going up. So that would really hurt the people very much. But if on the other side is the food subsidy has been reduced. Food subsidy which could probably give some kind of holiday has been reduced from 2.9 lakh crore to 0.07 lakh crore. And similarly, NREGA allocation has been reduced by 20. NREGA gives the employment, it's a demand-driven program. Only the most needy people go for NREGA works. Now, their allocation has been reduced by 25%. But however, the government has given, budget has provided 2.7, I think, 2.7 lakh crore in terms of MSP. But what is lost sight of? 86% of the total holdings are marginal and small, which means 0 to less than 2 hectares of land. This 86%, 86.2% marginal and small and marginal farmers are not likely to have any surplus. And as a result, they will not benefit from this MSP, only MSP for provision. What is more, that even if suppose some have got surplus, MSP benefit one can get only when there's a procurement agency. A large part of the country, there's no presence of the procurement agency. So this is just nominal. And then farmers will not have the access. Even large farmers in some of the places will not get any benefit from the MSP, where there is no presence of procurement agency. So this is about job loss. But job loss, as a result of job loss, there is also income loss. When there's a study of one study by the Azim Premji, State of Working in India report 2021, estimated that COVID-19 pushed 230 million people, 230 million people into poverty. As I said earlier, that all those NREGA, food subsidy, they give some support structure, but that all have been cut down. Now coming to the health and health, just a few months before the COVID-19, there was a UN declaration. I'll quote it because that is important. Apart from inadequacy in health services, which has been exposed nakedly during the COVID-19, there's a kind of endorsement of at the United Nations General Assembly in September 2019, just a few months prior to the pandemic. All countries endorsed a political declaration on universal health coverage, affirming that, quote, health is a precondition for an outcome, an indicator of the social, economic, and environmental and dimensions of sustainable development and the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, unquote. It is now noteworthy that universal health care does not mean just health care provided by health workers in the health facilities. It includes all those services that promote health and prevent disease at the population level. Outbreak surveillance, safe water, sanitation, etc., just to give a few examples. Thus, universal healthcare has many benefits beyond treating diseases and include improved health security and better protection against the ravages of future pandemics and epidemics. As the IMF in one of its papers has noted, that no country has made significant progress toward universal healthcare without relying on public monies as its main funding source. The budget has not significantly augmented, or rather remained stagnant at budget 2021-22. So when the requirement is so large that it's, of course, the health is a state subject. Here the state will have to allocate. But even so, health aid at the best of time does not account for. It accounts for barely 1% of GDP, in spite of all this. I would like to say a few remarks. One observation about resource mobilization. From one perspective, budget is very good that it has been able to maintain the stability in the tax system. But tax GDP share in India's tax GDP share is one of the smallest among the comparable countries, lowest among the comparable countries. It is 18% as compared to 20 to 28% with some of the emerging countries like Brazil, China, and South Africa. But then there's no attempt to say government budget all the attempt. And actually, government in last few years have been focusing more on dismantling the assets created, privatization of public enterprises, or asset demonetization. That is the way of mobilizing resources. But no attempt has been made to increase tax GDP ratio. There's scope for it. I'll give you a couple of things. And this is important because in a country like ours, the income distribution, which was mentioned by Professor Biswajit, has worsened. And it is also so much that profit share has gone up while wealth share has declined. The quarterly net profit of the BSE 200 companies recorded a high of 1.67 trillion rupees in the third quarter of financial year 2020-21, up by 57% over the year on year. Look at Sunsell, another estimate in World Inequality Index. This report is coordinated by Thomas Piketty. They observed the top 1% of India's population earned 20.7% of the national income in 2020-21, while the bottom 50% just 13.1%. Another thing is that when they talk about the wealth, top 1% of India own 33% of wealth, while the bottom 50% only 5.9%. It's the kind of wealth income and wealth accumulation. And in fact, 140% in India owns 53 lakh crore worth of wealth, which is much larger than the state domestic product of several states of the country. So given such accumulation of wealth or concentration of wealth and income, it is important to consider to levy tax on the ultra-rich classes. That's one area. A second thing, which was second is the area accumulation. Year after year, the tax areas have been rising, growing, and a large part is under, some parties under litigation. That this is very, I think this is a very important gesture which the initiative to which a budget has taken. They're trying to simplify the provisions so that the litigation comes down. So it's a very positive initiative. So these are the points which are so. What I would like to conclude, I don't want to take much time, any more time. The total resource mobilization, there are many areas. One other area is the GST. GST is a great tax. It is a game-changing tax reform, but it is very poorly designed. And poorly designed as a result of which we have not been able to realize the potential of GST. Therefore, it was expected that the budget would propose some expert committee or persuade the GST Council to appoint a technical committee to design for their recommend on the design of the GST. GST itself, 13th Finance Commission made a very elaborate exercise to estimate the potential of GST. And in fact, it has got huge growth potential. It's huge export.
यहाँ से लोग देख रहे हैं आपको इसमें और देव का फोन आया था कि साहब सोए हैं हमको जाके दे देंगे लोग सब देख रहे हैं इस स्क्रीन में तो खराब इंप्रेशन होता है उठ जाइए पार्टिसिपेट करने को कोई फायदा नहीं.
So let me conclude by saying that I think there are some of the initiatives which are extremely important, and the corporate trust on capital expenditure is most welcome. But what is more important, equally important, is to address the imminent issues and the structural problems. But we don't see much attempt to really to address this imminent problem, that like job loss, poverty redressal, income loss. These are not. We don't find any possibility that a budget will contribute much to redress these kind of issues which the economy has really faced. Thank you very much. Let me stop here.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for your wonderful insights and on a large number of issues. Maybe if you have time, then we can sort of discuss it later. Let me now invite Professor Ashwani Mahajan. Nitya had already introduced him. He's a co-convenor of Swadeshi Jagaran Manch and is a professor in PGDAB College. So, Ashwani ji, you have the floor now.